Absolutely. Here's a powerful and deeply compelling asterisk asterisk, opening asterisk asterisk, in the asterisk asterisk style of Tony Evans' asterisk asterisk, designed to asterisk asterisk convince the audience to listen to the full speech asterisk asterisk, titled asterisk, When God Speaks, We Must Listen asterisk. It captures a spiritual urgency, emotional intensity, and biblical authority. Let me tell you something right now, asterisk asterisk, this is not just another message. Asterisk asterisk, this is not just a talk, a teaching, or a moment to feel inspired and walk away unchanged. No, what you are about to hear could shift the course of your entire life. Because asterisk asterisk, when God speaks asterisk asterisk, heaven leans in, eternity holds its breath. And you better believe asterisk asterisk hell starts to tremble asterisk asterisk, because the voice of God carries power that nothing on this earth can stand against. Now, I know you've got distractions. I know your phone might be buzzing. I know your schedule is full and your heart may be heavy. But listen, asterisk asterisk, if there's ever been a time to pause, to focus, and to lean in, it's right now. Asterisk asterisk, because God has a word, and asterisk asterisk, it's not just any word. It's asterisk your asterisk word. Asterisk asterisk, you see, when God speaks, He's not speaking just to be heard, He's speaking to be obeyed. He's not whispering for entertainment. He's calling for transformation. And what you do after he speaks, that determines asterisk asterisk everything asterisk asterisk. Your peace, your purpose, your protection, and even your promotion asterisk asterisk, they're all on the other side of your response. Asterisk asterisk, so if you've been praying for direction, if you've been asking for clarity, if you've been wondering what your next step should be asterisk asterisk, don't miss this asterisk asterisk. Don't tune out. Don't scroll away. Don't harden your heart or let your mind wander. Because I believe that in the next few minutes, asterisk asterisk God is going to say something that you've been needing to hear your entire life. Asterisk asterisk, this is not just another video. This is a divine appointment. So settle yourself, quiet every other voice, and open your ears, your mind, and your heart asterisk asterisk, because when God speaks, we must listen. Asterisk asterisk, let me know if you want the rest of the speech in the same tone and flow. You know, one of the biggest misunderstandings people have when it comes to hearing God is this idea that He's not speaking, that somehow God has gone silent, that maybe He's too busy, too distant, or simply done talking. But let me correct that thinking right now, asterisk asterisk God has never stopped speaking. Asterisk asterisk, He's always been communicating. The problem isn't with God's voice asterisk asterisk. The problem is with our hearing asterisk asterisk. It's not that God has gone quiet. It's that we've grown deaf. Spiritually deaf, distracted, desensitized. We live in a world that is loud. Life gets noisy. You've got voices coming at you from every direction: social media, television, your job, your family, even your own thoughts. It's a 24/7 cycle of noise, and in that constant clutter of sound, the gentle whisper of God's voice often gets drowned out. Not because He's weak, but because He chooses not to compete with chaos. See, asterisk asterisk, God doesn't scream, He speaks. Asterisk asterisk, He doesn't force His voice into your life. He waits for you to quiet down and make room to hear Him. When the prophet Elijah ran in fear and desperation, God didn't speak to him in the earthquake, or the wind, or the fire. He came in a still small voice. And that's how God often speaks to us today. Not in the dramatic, but in the intimate. Not always in miracles, but in moments. But the question is, asterisk asterisk, are you still enough to hear him? Are you tuned in? Or are you too distracted, too hurried, too consumed with everything else that you've forgotten to lean in and listen? Asterisk asterisk, sometimes we're not just distracted, we're hardened. Hardened by disappointment, by sin, by pain. And that hardened heart becomes like spiritual earplugs. We stop expecting to hear God. We assume he's no longer speaking because we haven't heard him in a while. But the truth is, asterisk asterisk, God speaks to those whose hearts are positioned to hear. Asterisk asterisk, not perfect hearts, not religious hearts, but open hearts, hungry hearts, humble hearts. You want to hear from God, you've got to come before him with humility. With a posture that says, Lord, I don't have all the answers. I need you. I need to hear from you. That's when his voice becomes clear. Because God resists the proud, but he gives grace to the humble, and grace always opens the door for revelation. There are many ways God speaks. He speaks through his word. That Bible sitting on your shelf, asterisk asterisk, that's not just a book. Asterisk asterisk, that's the voice of God in print. He speaks through his Spirit, impressing things on your heart that align with his truth. He speaks through people, through sermons, through songs, through conversations that were divinely timed. And yes, he even speaks through circumstances. But again, if your ears aren't trained, you'll miss it. If your heart isn't sensitive, you'll ignore it. And when you miss God's voice, you start leaning on your own understanding. And that always leads to confusion, frustration, and regret. God's voice brings clarity, it brings conviction, it brings direction. It's not always what you asterisk want asterisk to hear, but it's always what you asterisk need asterisk to hear. And when he speaks with purpose. When he gives you a word, it's to guide you, to correct you, to prepare you, to protect you. Sometimes it's a whisper of peace in the middle of your storm. Sometimes it's a push when you've been standing still too long. Sometimes it's a red light when you've been trying to force something that's not in his will, but you won't catch that if your spirit isn't in position. You've got to learn to tune your heart to God like a radio signal. You've got to train your ear in the quiet place, in the secret place, where it's just you and him. Because the more time you spend in his presence, the more familiar his voice becomes. And when you know his voice, you stop being fooled by the counterfeits. You stop mistaking fear for wisdom. You stop calling compromise strategy. You stop listening to the world and start listening to the Word. So don't you say God's not speaking. The question is asterisk asterisk, are you listening? Asterisk asterisk, are you willing to slow down long enough to hear what the Creator of heaven and earth wants to say directly to asterisk, you asterisk? Are you willing to cut through the noise and lean into the whisper? Because I promise you, if you'll just get still, if you'll just posture your heart, if you'll just turn your attention to him, asterisk asterisk, you will hear his voice. Asterisk asterisk, and once you do, you'll never want to live another day without it. When God speaks, he doesn't speak to impress you. He speaks to instruct you. And if you want to see the power of God move in your life, if you want to walk in alignment with his will, then you've got to move from just hearing to actually obeying. Because it's not enough to say you believe. It's not enough to sit in a church pew or play a worship song. The real shift comes when you take what God said and put it into action, even when it's hard, even when it's inconvenient, even when it doesn't make sense. Obedience is not a suggestion. It's the pathway to divine favor. It's the key that unlocks doors no man can shut. And some of us are waiting on God to do something new, while God is waiting on us to do what he already said. You see, God doesn't give fresh instructions to those who have ignored the last ones. He doesn't waste his voice. He's not a motivational speaker handing out advice. He's the King of glory giving divine direction, and he expects it to be followed. Let's be honest, sometimes we treat obedience like it's optional, like it's something we'll consider if the conditions are right. We want confirmation, validation, convenience. We want God to lay it all out, make it easy, and then maybe we'll move. But faith doesn't work like that. God often gives a command before he gives a reason. He says, go, and the understanding comes later. He says, trust me, and the clarity comes in the obedience, not before it. When God told Abraham to leave his country, he didn't give him a roadmap. He gave him a word. Go to the land I will show you. And Abraham obeyed, not knowing where he was going, but trusting who he was following. That's what obedience looks like. It's not about having all the answers. It's about responding to the one who is the answer. And because Abraham obeyed, he became the father of many nations. His obedience activated the promise. See, some of us are praying for breakthrough, but we're walking in rebellion. We want the blessing without the burden of obedience. But God doesn't bless disobedience. He doesn't anoint rebellion. He doesn't endorse partial surrender. Delayed obedience is disobedience. Selective obedience is disobedience. You can't just follow the parts of God's word that are easy and ignore the ones that stretch you. Obedience is all or nothing. And here's what makes obedience powerful. It invites the supernatural. When you do what God says, even when it doesn't make sense, you open the door for him to do what only he can do. Peter didn't catch the miracle of the fish by sitting in the boat questioning Jesus' fishing expertise. He caught it when he said, "At your word, I will let down the net." He obeyed, and the catch was so great it nearly sank the boat. That's what happens when we align our actions with his instructions. You don't have to understand it to obey it. You don't have to feel ready to step out. All you have to do is say, "Yes, Lord," and take the next step. That's how you position yourself for his favor. Favor isn't random, it's intentional. It follows obedience. And when you walk in obedience, even your enemies can't stop what God is doing in your life. They might form the weapon, but it won't prosper, not because of who you are, but because you're standing under the covering of divine obedience. Sometimes God will ask you to do things that don't feel fair, things that require sacrifice, things that go against what you thought your life would look like. But remember, this obedience to God is never in vain. He sees every step you take in faith. He sees every tear you cry when you're trying to trust him in the dark. And he honors those who honor him. There is no obedience that goes unnoticed by heaven. So if you're standing at a crossroads today and you know God has spoken something to you, don't delay. Don't negotiate. Don't rationalize your way out of it. Just obey, because on the other side of that obedience is your next level. On the other side of that obedience is peace, is protection, is purpose, is power. Your obedience today is setting you up for the blessing tomorrow. If you want to see God move in your life like never before, you don't need another word. You need to walk in the one He already gave you. One of the most dangerous things a believer can do is hear God's voice clear and undeniable and still hesitate. See, we love the idea of God speaking, but what we don't always grasp is the urgency behind His voice. When God speaks, He's not just filling the air with words. He's not just giving suggestions or friendly reminders. He's calling you into a moment of destiny and the window for that moment doesn't stay open forever. We assume time is on our side. We think we can wait until tomorrow, until things settle down, until we feel more confident, more qualified, more ready. But what we don't understand is that delayed obedience is disobedience in disguise. It sounds responsible. It feels cautious. But at its root, it's a refusal to trust that God knows what He's doing and when He's doing it. When God told Noah to build the ark, it was a word of instruction and a word of timing. If Noah had waited until the first drop of rain to pick up a hammer, it would have been too late. The flood didn't wait for his feelings. It didn't pause for his questions. The opportunity to obey came with a window, and so does yours. You can miss what God has prepared if you don't move when He says move. God's not obligated to repeat Himself. That moment of prompting you felt, that conviction, that stirring, that still, small voice, you can't assume it'll be there next week. You can't assume that same door will stay open. Sometimes you only get one chance to say yes before the moment passes you by. Not because God is cruel, but because your calling is tied to His calendar There's a timing to His plan, and your delay can disrupt the divine alignment He's trying to bring into your life. Some people live their entire lives wondering why they never stepped into what God promised. They wonder why their prayers seem unanswered, why their purpose feels distant, why the joy and fulfillment never come. And often the answer lies in a moment they ignored, a moment when God spoke and they stalled. They got stuck in analysis. They got trapped in fear. They convinced themselves they needed more signs, more evidence, more confirmation, when all they really needed was more faith. You don't need to know the whole journey to take the first step. You don't need a full map when you've got a word from the one who created the road. But every moment you spend waiting in disobedience is a moment you could have spent walking in purpose. Every minute you delay is a minute the enemy uses to plant seeds of doubt, discouragement, and distraction. And if you're not careful, you'll talk yourself out of something God already approved. When God spoke to Jonah and told him to go to Nineveh, Jonah ran in the opposite direction. He delayed, he disobeyed, and it landed him in the belly of a fish. Why? Because running from God's voice always leads to storms. It's never a peaceful path when you reject divine direction. You can try to avoid it. You can try to delay it. But eventually God will deal with it. And you might not like how the correction comes. But here's the beauty. Even when we mess up, even when we delay, God is still merciful ***. He can redeem what we've wasted. He can restore what we've forfeited. But we must come back to the place of surrender. We must be willing to say, Lord, I delayed, but I'm ready now. Because even if you missed the first window, God in His grace can open another. But don't take that grace for granted. The next time He speaks, be ready, be quick, be willing. Don't let fear rob you of what faith was supposed to unlock. There's a weight to God's voice, a timing to His instruction, and a purpose behind every command. When He tells you to move, it's because the ground is ready. When He tells you to act, it's because heaven has already cleared the way. But your delay can detour your destiny. Your hesitation can hold up the harvest. So the next time you hear Him, don't stall. Don't overthink it. Don't reason your way out of it. Asterisk, asterisk, step into it. Asterisk, asterisk, trust Him even if your knees are shaking. Trust Him even if you don't have it all figured out. Because God's not asking you to understand everything asterisk, asterisk. He's asking you to obey the moment. Asterisk, asterisk, we are living in a time where voices are everywhere. Voices on the news, voices in your feed, voices in your circle, voices in your mind, and not every voice is from God. Just because something sounds good doesn't mean it's true. Just because it feels right doesn't mean it's righteous. The enemy has always used counterfeit voices to pull people off the path of God's will. And if you don't know how to recognize God's voice, you'll be vulnerable to deception. That's why hearing God isn't just about intimacy, it's about protection. The serpent didn't show up to Eve with a weapon. He showed up with a conversation. He didn't use force. He used suggestion. Did God really say? And that one question caused her to second. Guess what she already knew God had said. That's how deception works. It doesn't always come like a firestorm. It often comes like a whisper, trying to twist what God already made clear. If you don't know how to stand on what God asterisk did asterisk say, you'll fall for what the enemy asterisk suggests asterisk. That's why you've got to be so familiar with the voice of God that everything else sounds off. You've got to be so grounded in His Word that when a lie shows up, you can spot it instantly. If your spiritual ears are dull, you'll confuse noise for truth. You'll let the culture talk you out of conviction. You'll let opinions override obedience. And you'll end up walking further and further away from what God called you to do. Not because He stopped leading, but because you started listening to the wrong voice. God's voice doesn't bring confusion. It brings clarity. His voice doesn't manipulate. It convicts. It doesn't lead you into fear. It leads you into peace, even if it's peace in the middle of a storm. That's how you know the difference. God never contradicts His word. He never pushes you to violate His truth in the name of opportunity. He never trades righteousness for relevance. When He speaks, it aligns with Scripture, it points to Jesus, and it produces the fruit of the Spirit in your life. The enemy knows he can't destroy you if you stay under God's covering, so he tries to lure you out with lies. He'll use discouragement, distraction, even religious language to get you to move off your foundation. He'll try to rush your timing. He'll tell you to compromise just a little. He'll make you question whether obedience really matters. That's why you need the discernment that only comes from consistently listening to the voice of God. Not just once in a while, but every single day. And don't think the enemy only targets the weak. He came after Jesus in the wilderness when He was fasting and alone. If the enemy was bold enough to come for the Son of God, you better believe he'll come for you too. But how did Jesus fight back? He didn't argue, he didn't panic, he didn't negotiate. He answered every lie with the word of God. It is written. That's the power of knowing God's voice and God's truth. It shuts down the enemy before he even gets a foothold. You want to protect your family. Train your ears to hear God. You want to guard your heart from falling into sin. Learn the sound of your shepherd's voice. You want to stay strong when the world is pulling you in every direction. Stay anchored in the voice of the one who never changes, because the voice you listen to will shape the life you live. And if the loudest voice in your life isn't God's, you're headed for confusion. It's not enough to be spiritual. It's not enough to be sincere. You can be sincerely wrong if you're listening to the wrong source. That's why every day you've got to tune in again. You've got to pray, Lord, let me hear you today above every other voice, above my own emotions, above my fears, above the lies, above the noise. Because the clearer his voice becomes, the easier it is to say no to everything else. There is safety in God's voice. There is power in his word. There is direction in his whisper. But you've got to be willing to shut out every competing voice. Not just with your ears, but with your heart. When you make his voice your priority, he'll make your path clear, your heart strong, and your steps secure. Because, in a world full of noise, the only voice that leads to life is his.